Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of your favorite podcast. And if it's not your favorite, we have a problem at this point. Welcome to Woodworking is Bullshit, a podcast about creativity, art, design, sometimes woodwork, sometimes not. I'm your host, Paul Jasper, scientist by day, woodworker by night, and I'm joined by my two fabulous co-hosts, Eric Curtis, fine furniture maker and content creator, and Mary Tissayi, bundled up, snug as a bug in a rug, if you could see the video.
It's winter. Winter is coming.
You look like Bilbo Tissayi.
I have no issue with that. I will take that as a compliment, honestly.
Bilbo Tissayi. Mary Sai, UX designer by day, contemporary furniture woodductress by night.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that took a detour.
I was going to say, what was I going to say? Heiress, but you're not an heiress. You're a woodductress.
Yes.
If only. Ugh.
That's been her entire career arc. She's been waiting to find out that she's got a rich uncle.
All right, so today's episode, we're just gonna get cracking. Today's episode, I think, is something everyone can relate to who's made anything. All right, it's about the idea of repetition. So making more than one of something, and we know that repetition sometimes sucks, right? You're standing there, you're making like 20, 40, 60, 80 of the same thing in a row. Eric, is there a problem?
No, I think did my Zencaster just freeze?
I don't know, did it?
I was trying to message Mary a joke about dildo baggins, but it's not working. The message isn't working. But
I'm glad that's officially recorded on podcast now.
I also can't move my window out of the screen. I don't know what's happening.
I mean, it's still recording.
It's still recording. Anyway, so I was...
Okay, well, that just officially became part of it.
I know. Should we start over or should we just let that go?
Nah, let that ride.
No, we're keeping
But the
it.
thing is, I can't set my screen up for the ad read later, which is what I was trying to do. But so we're going to have to figure that out. But anyway, so production work sucks, huh?
Mary is going to be dildo baggins for the rest of the episode.
What?
That was one of those moments where, like, I feel like a joke maybe shouldn't make it onto the pod, but then it's too late because things happen.
Okay, well, Eric, me, and Dildo Baggins are going to
No.
Mary, what I was actually going to tell you is that your mic is really hot right now, but
oh yeah,
but I couldn't tell you that in the group chat.
Oh my god.
Okay, well, I don't know
else.
I don't know if the listeners know, but we don't edit this. So if you don't know that before, you know that now.
I feel like you say that every time some dumb shit happens, Paul.
Well, it happens all the time, Eric.
Honestly.
All right, good. So back to the topic at hand. Repetition. We all have been there. And the overarching question is, how do you make it interesting? How do you fucking deal with it? You're standing there doing 60 of the same operation, more in a row, day after day, week after week, month after month. And it depends on your scale, obviously, but how do we see repetition? Is it something to be avoided? Does it stymie creativity? Does it enhance creativity? How do we feel about it? So I want to start by saying, for a long time, I think I avoided repetition because I found it intellectually boring. However, in more recent years, I have found that there's subtleties within it that make it more interesting. and that
Such
can
as?
make it more interesting, such as, Eric. And I think maybe you mentioned wanting to go here when we were talking before the episode, such as, instead of thinking about like, oh, is that piece interesting or is that piece not interesting, thinking more of it from, how can I optimize this process that I'm doing 50 or 100 times to go better, to go more better, to be more efficient, to be less frustrating, to use up less materials, to take less time.
Yeah, I mean, so we talk about the need for iteration in the creative process constantly, right? Like you make a thing, that's not the last time you're going to make that thing. That thing could lead to an idea down the road that you employ in a different situation, and then that makes that piece better. That's all part of the iterative process. And production work can be an iterative process. It can be like, you make 20 of a thing and then you go, okay, that was a first batch run. I figured out the kinks. I figured out where the workflow jams up. And so now I can split that up in a different way. And then the next iteration of that, you're making 80 in the time it took you to make 20 of a thing. And there are people who really enjoy that minutia. This is like the creative mind versus the mathematical mind. They are opposite sides of the same coin, but there are people who really enjoy those little tiny tweaks to see how far they can push it the next time.
So I'm curious about your innate set points. So Eric and Mary and me, what I want to do is like, what's your innate like set point with sort of one-off versus repetition? Like some people,
what do you mean by set point?
Sorry, if that's a spectrum, like super repetition, iterative monster, to I only make everything once because I'm an artiste.
So, like, where do we tend to land?
Yeah, where do you naturally tend to go?
I tend to go one-offs, although the timing of this conversation is funny because I just did a set of cutting boards, thing I hate doing the most, but it is Christmas time and my family demands stupid things. But
Mary, that's not a stupid thing, and you're going to tell us more about the said cutting boards.
It's Christmas, so I guess I'll hate myself.
I mean, basically, I avoid doing repetitive things. One, because I don't really have that much time, and two, if I am going to use my time efficiently, I want to be like all in on like one thing that I think is pushing me creatively and design aspect, craft aspect. So I usually try to do one-off pieces. I have, however, done like repeat furniture pieces, not often, but I've done it a few times, or I've done one piece a few times, and I did find it way easier after the first time, just like knocking it out. The speed at which I think I cut my time at least in half. It was just so much faster. So like, I get it. I get the idea of doing making production pieces, and it can be kind of satisfying. I think also, like, if you are just knocking things out, you feel really productive, and maybe that's not creatively engaging you as much, but there is a very positive and benefit to, feeling productive and getting work done.
That's a good point. And Mary, if one is I only make anything once, and 10 is I make multiples of everything, I'm a production lover, what kind of number would you give yourself?
Mary was a production lover in college.
I don't entirely get the joke, but I also am offended.
And you don't want to ask what he means either.
I think I would probably rate myself as like a 3.
Okay. Eric, what's your natural set point, do you think?
I think I definitely lean more towards making one-off objects. I just find the process of not knowing where a thing is going much more engaging. And rather than not knowing like how a process is going to unfold and tweaking that. But as time goes by, I do, and like the creative demand of like constantly making interesting objects for clients, constantly making YouTube videos, trying to make sure that the YouTube videos are interesting and polished, and like just the creative stretches in a bunch of different ways. There are times where I'm really grateful for making an object that I've made 100 times. Not necessarily 100 in a row, but an object I know how to make, and I'm just doing a thing and not thinking, and I can turn my brain off. So, for example, like we've all carved 1 million spoons.
I haven't. I've only made one.
Okay. Well, like we've all carved spoons, and like we all have the thing that we started doing early on in our woodworking journey, right? And mine was spoons. And Sarah asked me to make her a spoon for Christmas because I haven't made one for her yet. And I was more than happy. The other night I was just like, I was dead. I was exhausted, and I was like, I just need some playtime in the shop of like mindless work, you know? And I just sat there and carved a spoon for 2 hours, you know? And like, that's not really production because it's not mastering like a multiple of a thing, but it is a thing I know how to do innately because I've done it so many times. So I think my natural inclination is to fall much more toward one-offs, but I am slowly finding more and more enjoyment in the kind of the craft side of the thing, where it's not so much creative pushing the limits. It's just, I know how to do this thing and I know how to execute it well, and I can just let my hands do, and my brain doesn't have to think.
So you're almost
like sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, that seems like a combination of the two, because I assume that you are not making the same spoon over and over again.
Yeah, that's totally fair, and that's why I was like, it's not really production work. If I were to say make 20 cutting boards, I would die. So it really depends. I really, and we'll get into this later in the episode, but like, Paul, your idea of doing a small batch run once a year is a thing that I really like for a lot of reasons. And that's a kind of thing where I've wanted to do that again for a while. The last time I did a batch run was, I think, 2018, and I made, I think, 20 coffee scoops. I turned them all. And I still have the one that I made that year, and I sold the other 19. And at that moment I was like, I don't ever want to do a batch run of anything ever again.
Okay. So Eric, what number do you give yourself? 1 being I only do one-offs, 10 being I do repetitive tasks.
I don't know. 3? Is that what Mary said?
So Mary's a 3.
Matching.
Yeah.
Hey. Twinning. All right. So I also very much prefer one-offs, as I said at the beginning of the episode. I would give myself a 3, probably a 2 or a 3. I almost always do one-offs. All right. So we've sort of in some ways disqualified ourselves from talking about the values.
But I don't think so. Like we've talked about our preferences of what we want to do creatively, right? But our experiences do qualify us to have this conversation.
So let's talk about each experience. So what I'd like to do is like, so when you do one-offs, why do you do one-offs, and why do you avoid repetition? What about doing one-offs? And Eric, you sort of gave part of your answer, and I loved it. The joy of not knowing, the uncertainty is arousing. I think it's an arousal, because when you don't know, it's like, imagine like
easy dildo Baggins.
Is Mary aroused?
I saw those eyes she was giving you.
The idea of not knowing what's coming next can be very arousing. I remember a time I was hiking, and we were going down the mountain so fast, stone to stone, right? So you're walking only on stones, right? And all you can see is the next stone that you're going to step on. And you have so much momentum. You know that you have to pick another stone after that, but you don't know where it is, what it looks like, what angle it is, how far it is, what your ankle's going to do when it hits it. And there was something like so damn exciting about not knowing like what was next. It was like an adrenaline rush in some ways. So Eric, I sort of get that. If you don't, you've invested so much in a piece, you have so much tied into it, and you're not exactly sure where it's going. And there's like a tension to that is fuels you creatively and like it's exciting, I think.
No, 100%. I think hiking is a great metaphor for that, actually. Like this, what I mean, you all hike. You've been at that point in the trail when you're like climbing a mountain where you come to that flat and you're like,
And
oh,
you're
this
like,
is this is the peak, man. Like I'm coming up, and then you come around the bend and you're like, fuck, no, really? Like you just see it keep going. But there's something about that, like that false hope of the promise of being there, that then you're rejuvenated to keep going. Whereas like if you knew that it was still another 45 minutes to the top of the mountain, you would be like, all right, well, I just got to buckle down and do the work. So I think there is there's that hope aspect of it. That is, that's the arousal part. You're like, I think this might work. And then it doesn't. And you go, but this other thing worked. So let me see where that went.
I love it. That's a great example. Mary, what about you do you like? What about the creative one-off process for you keeps you excited?
Well, I've said before, my favorite part of the entire process is the designing part. So for me, if I'm going to do another piece, like I want it to be iterative off of my last design. And the reason why I choose the one off is because that's not necessarily always my favorite. If I'm going to be start creating a new piece and like spending the time on designing something new, I want it to be, fulfilling, and I want it to be something else that I haven't done before. And I just feel a lot better when I'm doing something completely brand new. Like if I've had people reach out and ask for like specific pieces, and then if they're like really set on them, they'll be like, okay, I can do something similar, like inspired by that, but it's not going to be the same because I really don't want to do the same thing. And I think that is fine. But for my own personal preference, I really like the idea of pursuing a lot of different avenues in terms of creativity. And I also am often inspired by things that are, just like in my everyday life, and they don't always relate to each other. So I just kind of let my design inspiration take over.
So go ahead, Eric. You have a question.
Well,
for me.
yeah. So I want to ask you this, Mary, but I don't. I want to be a little bit careful because I don't want to be. I don't know. I don't want to like challenge you in the wrong way. I don't want to be offensive, but we're good enough friends, so I'll challenge you and be offensive. I think the reason why I'm drawn to one-off work is because so much of my work is done with hand tools that I don't know that I could replicate it like time and time again. And if I were to make it into a production piece, I would have to alter a great number of my processes to do that. Whereas your process, and correct me if I'm wrong, but your process is more reliant on machines than hand tools is, or at least more reliant on machines than my process is.
Yeah.
Am I correct in that so far?
Yeah, I think so.
So it seemed like you have a background in product design. I don't. So it seems to me like you're doing all of the work in the iterative processes of creating a product that you could produce at scale and reap the benefits of being a really good designer. And then you do it once and then you go, well, the thing is done. So like if it feels like you're getting to the apex of the mountain and going like, but I've seen other mountains, like you're right there. So why not then like give that design to somebody else to produce and be like, or, I'm going to run 10 of these and sell them.
Good question.
I mean, I would happily have someone else produce them for me. I mean, my designs in general aren't that hard to make. It's just the design, like getting to the actual design was the part that I enjoy the most. So like I would happily hand it off for some sort of production line, etc.
So if you had, say, full like a 4x8 CNC and you could batch out, all you had to do was like glue up some ash and dye it black and cut those parts out on the CNC, and then you could produce your coffee table in 2 hours versus 2 months.
I don't want to do it. See, even 2 hours for me is a lot of time in my week.
Wow.
I can barely get 2 hours in the shop.
Ma'am, 2 hours is the same amount of time for all of us. That is
True.
sound
Fair,
time.
fair. Yes, that is true. But I mean, I could be using
Eric.
those 2 hours for something else that I would rather do instead.
Sure. Okay. All right. That's fair. And that's fair. And I feel much the same way of like that once the thing is figured out, it's no longer interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I also like there is a part of this that I feel like we could skim over very easily, which is the value of production work, which is like we can be hoity-toity and like, well, you know, we're intelligent and we're successful, so we don't have to do production work. So we're not gonna do production work. But sometimes, and there's a lot of people in this situation, you just have to pay the fucking bills. Like you just have to do the thing and you're never going to make money on one-off pieces. Like you're going to make some money. I'm not saying you're going to lose money on one-off pieces. What I mean is like the money, if you're trying to run a business, the money that's actually going to come in is in production work in built-ins. And built-ins are production work because they're just big fucking boxes that you face differently depending on the client. But it's production work. And so I feel like there is a level of elitism that all three of us are guilty at. I'm very much including myself.
Well, Eric, elitism
that is a thing of like, well,
Eric,
I don't want to do production work because it bores me.
Eric, sweetheart, dearie.
Oh my God.
He hit me with the sweetheart.
Darling. Elitism implies a judgment. And I think Mary and I have that feeling about one-off or production work because we have a job separate from the wood shop, and so we can afford that luxury. I consider it a luxury.
Sure.
It is horrible business. It doesn't make any business sense at all.
That's
right?
my point, right? That's my ultimate point. I'm not trying to judge us for wanting to make one-offs because ultimately, like, you should be making the things that you want to make. Otherwise, don't be a woodworker. Get a job. And then be a hobbyist so you can make whatever the fuck you want.
Yes. So that is a plus of being a hobbyist is you don't have to do that. But for me, like I wanted to understand what it's like doing production because I thought there might be lessons there to learn. And Eric, I think you've started to dabble. Like I feel like you've started to tickle some of the ideas that good things can come from production work. Not, of course, number one, money.
Sure.
And, that's where you earn your money is in production work with
making
efficiency
big
upgrades,
plywood boxes.
Yes, with technological upgrades like CNC. And so I started to do some production. I've made hundreds and hundreds of Stadia boxes, the little ones, several hundred.
Have you really?
But probably about 300.
No kidding.
And I've made them a variety of ways. And boy, I tell you what, the process has changed.
Yeah. All right. So this is an interesting. Maybe this is just me being a wood nerd and a craft nerd, but like from the first Stadia box that you ever made, how did you make it, and what was the last one you ever made, and how did you make it?
Oh, that's so good. So as an example,
do you make them?
Yeah. So as an example to the listeners, so a Stadium, if you don't know this, the Stadia box, what we're talking about is a half circle and a half circle connected by two straight lines. So it's not quite an oval, okay, but it's geometrically a stadium. And I've made many of these because I find the form very compelling. The first one I ever made.
Industrial design, they call it the pill form.
Oh yeah, a pill.
These
pill
sons
shape.
of bitches.
The first one I ever made, Eric, to give you an example of the efficiency changes. The first one I ever made, I just took a block of wood, plunged a Forstner bit.
I was gonna say, a Forstner bit. I was gonna say, did you make a router jig?
No, well, that's the second iteration. Okay. I plunged a Forstner bit on both of the semicircles and in between, and then just flattened the walls with a chisel. And
interesting.
It looked like,
it looked like dick. Did you sell that one?
I think I did.
Yeah.
The problem was the Forstner bits put these these little
Uh-huh.
holes on the
holes,
bottom.
yeah.
The
And so
little
I
nipples.
had to put a false floor on that to cover all the shit. But anyway,
Ah.
it was just a pilot test. And then I got into using, and through that repetition, like I did that once or twice, and I'm like, this sucks. And then I was like, okay, a router jig. So then I built a router jig for it, and I made many with with handheld router. But the problem is the interior of the box is like 2.5 inches deep, and so I had to have a spiral upcut bit that protruded out of the
Yeah.
router 2.5
Yeah.
inches. That's
Yeah.
kind of scary
Yeah.
on a
Yeah.
tiny
That
little
is.
box, and you're holding this machine with your hands. Okay, so I did that for about 100 or 150.
Is that how you
boxes.
made mine?
No, I think I.
No? Okay.
Okay, so but let me tell you why. So I'm doing the router jig, but I never felt comfortable holding that router on such a tiny little box, and the bit is so nasty. It's like that bit when you look at it, it fucking snarls at you. You know, it's like I want to eat your fingers, motherfucker. You know, it was scary to use. And then
Do you do the inside first and then the outside?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I did the outside on a bandsaw and then sanded it. I had a close call.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, like the router kicked on a corner. It was actually not an Anastasia box, but it was a 90-degree corner. The router bit that I used for this, it caught on the corner. It shoved the router so hard in my hands that the collar broke. The metal collar
No shit.
broke.
Oh, wow.
Went into the bit. Sparks flew in my face. And I was I was able to hold it and I turned it off, and I had to go change my pants. Right? And I'll never forget it. That moment, I was like, fuck this. I am buying a CNC tomorrow. And
Is that why you bought it?
Yes.
No shit. And
The
the
next
opportunities that has opened up too.
Right. But the next day I bought a CNC, and and I've been making them on the CNC ever since. So your question's a good one. So repetition has informed me about like safety. It's informed me about efficiency, and it informed me about a new tool or an innovation that has fueled the rest of my development. It's amazing. So like without that repetition, would that have happened? No.
Yeah.
And so that's one
a
great
point.
case for repetition.
Yeah.
There's also a case to be made for repetition about it's not Mary, maybe I could challenge you about this. Not challenge, but like I could ask for your opinion about this. Is you find one-offs so compelling, right? Because it's like, ooh, the design and the thinking and the this and the that. Now that's because design is the focus. Now with production, efficiency and ease and like repeatability and accuracy is now the focus. Have you ever done like a task where you had to do it many, many times, and instead of thinking about a design upgrade, you were thinking about an efficiency upgrade?
Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, I had mentioned that there's a coffee table I'd done a couple of times that the second and third time was a lot faster. So the first time I like learned everything that went wrong and spent the time on the second and third versions to make the jigs to just make it so much faster. Like you have to make a jig if you're going to be in production work.
Okay,
It's
question. Did you find that process of efficiency upgrades and jigs, did you find that compelling?
Sometimes I make a jig that I'm pretty proud of. I'm like, wow, this is like, it's annoying how long it takes. Like, I feel like everyone hates how long it takes to make a jig, but sometimes if it's like a creative jig, I'm like, okay, I'm like pretty proud of this.
Isn't like that's the inventor side of what we do, right?
Yeah.
Like, and there's a real value to that. There's like the crazy old guy toiling away in the garage, like making the mousetrap. That's just like, oh, that's clever as fuck, you know? And like this is like Phil Morley is a great designer of objects in general, but also like there's a part of me that's like Phil is a better designer of jigs than he is of furniture because his jigs are so fucking clever. Like he's so good at.
There's something.
he understands that process of not only like how he's going to produce a thing over and over, but how he's going to give that to an apprentice or an employee, and they can produce that over and over. And that takes a level of understanding the craft that I think coming up in the world of making one-offs, like you never have to learn how to teach somebody at a low level that way.
I would argue that like jig making, creative jig making is in itself like a design problem.
It is.
And it is a whole other creative mini problem that you're tackling in your grand scheme of your project.
I mean, is that like maybe this is grossly oversimplifying what you do for a living, Mary, and I apologize if it is, but like is that not kind of what you do? Like if you were to digitize the jig, like you build things for like to make the user interface of your products easier.
Yeah, basically. I mean, the whole purpose of my job is to make things easy, intuitive, and invisible,
and efficient to I imagine some degree.
Yes,
like that's
it would be
that's literally just jig making, but like in the digital space.
Yeah,
that's
pretty
a great
much.
analogy.
I mean, the whole point is you're solving a problem, which in our case, when you're creating a piece of art or a piece of furniture, that's not necessarily the main question that or the main goal that you're trying to solve. But for me, in my regular day job, it's just, what is the problem? How do we solve it as fast as possible?
I think to an extent, like that question is the question that we contend with on one-offs as well, right? Like, how do we solve a problem? We have a problem. It's not looking right. We need it to function a certain way. And so we go about that in the way that we know, because we're only doing it once, which means I can take a chisel to it. I can take a hand plane to it, and I can fix the problem. But if I have to teach an employee how to do it, I have an apprentice who's coming up, or Mary, in your case, I have 7 million people using the Adobe interface who have to do this, who have to solve this problem on a daily basis. I have to do it in a way that is accessible to them. So I have to create a process to do that, which is production woodworking.
Yeah. The problem is, I'm not complaining about my job at all, but the problem is that the more people that you have to please, or you have to,
we live in an age where you can't please anybody.
Then it's harder. I mean, it's like making a jig for someone who like doesn't have arms, and someone who like can't move around the shop.
Then you get sued by the ADA. Yeah, like sure. You can't please anybody, let alone everybody.
It's a very wide range of people.
Yeah.
All right. There's also a case to be made for repetitious tasks. Of course, we talked about like finding ways to make it more efficient, the jig making or the efficiency challenges being the focus rather than design, right? Are there moments where it spurs creativity? So Eric, I'm going to ask you this, and I'm going to preface this by saying, does it open up brain cycles while you're doing the repetitive tasks that are available for this? And secondly, does it help you envision V2, V3, V4 of the same object?
My initial inclination is to say absolutely yes. Like once you master the thing and you can do the thing over and over, you're no longer using active attention to do the thing. And then that active attention goes elsewhere, which allows you to think about, how can I do this faster? How can I do it better? How can I do it? How can I sell it for more? Like whatever the question is that's on mind. And I mean, like we've talked about the Shakers in past episodes, and we know that they invented the table saw. Like we know, or the circular saw, in fairness, we know that came from her watching Tabitha something or other, watching people doing the same repetitive task over and over every single day, day in and day out. And she went, at some point, the light bulb went off where she went, I can figure out a way to make this more efficient from an energy standpoint. And then she invented the circular saw. So like, that's a very clear in our wheelhouse example of repetition led to the space for thought expansion to invent a new tool which made life more efficient.
It's a great example.
As far as the creative side of things, like so the piece I'm working on right now is like, it's a piece that I've not made before, but all of the processes I've done before, like, and I've been veneering fucking acres of wood on this piece. Like it's obscene. And at some point by after 3-4 weeks of veneering, you're not thinking about veneering anymore. And you're thinking about like, okay, well, now first of all, I've already cut my time for stitching and veneering a surface in half because I'm just more comfortable with the process. And now I'm thinking about 3 steps ahead of time. How am I going to approach this in order to solve this problem? And the only reason that's happening in that time in that space is because I'm doing the repetitive motions of veneering more surfaces. So I think there's real value in allowing that space. It's the boredom conversation again, right?
I would also speak from, I don't do it like the repetitive process within design is the one that I can speak more to. Because if you look at my iPad, you can see the progress of a design because it's the same thing over and over again, but one thing changed. Or I know that I'm honing in on a file design I like when I start to like do the same thing over and over again, and I feel good about it. And I mean, it's not like I'm making each one of these. Like maybe if I had the time, then I would spend the time making, little prototypes of each or a model of each, etc. But even from the beginning design phase, you spend the time going through V1, V2, V3, etc.
Yeah. And you can't get to V3 unless you do V1.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
You have to.
That's a critical thing that we often overlook.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, you can't build the CNC and have the files for the Stadia boxes without realizing all of the things because here's the other thing, right? Like you can do it by hand and realize all of the things that aren't working from a design perspective. That's what prototyping is, right? Mm-hmm. That's like architects building things out of cardboard and foam core and working things to scale in CAD models. And then you go and build the thing with a router jig and you go, oh, that wall is too thin and it keeps blowing up on me. So you learn information on V2 that you can then apply to V3 when you get it into full production, and it works. But
just a small note, I think a lot of early woodworkers are too hard on themselves. They're like, when they get to V3, they're like, oh, I was so dumb. I don't know why I didn't come to this directly. Like, why was it so hard to come to this? Like, why did it take me so long? And it's like, because you can't start at V3 every time. All of us have to go through V1, V2, and they're like dinging themselves. It's like, oh, that was so stupid. I built it that way to begin with. It's like, yeah, but you wouldn't have come to that had you not done it. You got to pay the piper sometimes.
I mean, every time, I think. I think that's an excellent point. Is that a thing that's unique to us?
No.
Like, I don't think it is. I don't think
no
it
way.
Is. But I see it the most, obviously, in woodworkers, and like it happens where they're like, it's the same thing as when the woodworker is like, oh, this piece was great, but look where I fucked this up. Like it's that same thing, right?
That's every woodworker,
right? And so like, is that a thing? It's not obviously unique to us, but why do we do it so much?
I don't know.
That's my every day in my day job. It's literally like, I can tell you the process. I design something, I see some user use them, like, you idiot, why don't you get it? And then I'm like, it's a flawless design. I think you're completely wrong. But then obviously I have to check my ego and then iterate based off of their feedback. And then like 5 versions later is when we actually get to the thing that most people understand how to use. And my ego is severely diminished by
that's very interesting, Mary. That's because it's the same process from the opposite perspective, right? It's like, I fucking nailed this and you're an idiot for not being able to use it. That's really interesting.
I'm a terrible researcher because whenever you're supposed to be as like neutral as possible, and like my eyes are bugging out because like, why aren't you doing the thing I want you to do?
Mary, can we talk about your ego for the rest of the episode?
It's just every day is a constant stepping on my ego.
Speaking of Mary's ego, this was really funny. Earlier today, I was listening to a couple of different like YouTube clips of creative people talking about the creative process and repetition, and one of them was Gene Wilder in like an open format interview, and the interviewer asked him to. She was like, "Could you talk about X and like, you know, can you define X?" And like he rolled, like visually rolled his eyes on stage. And she was like, "I know nobody wants to go first," and he was like, "No, I fucking hate defining things. Like, can we not?"
Incorrect.
It was like, it doesn't
incorrect.
make any sense in a creative context to define things. Defeats the entire purpose.
Well, Mary's
And I
a
was like,
designer. Mary's a designer first, right?
It's not the creative part that needs a definition. It's the idiots around me. Who...
really showing your hands, dildo.
One thing I wanted to add to this conversation about repetition is it's hard to really get good at something. And I think we were just touching on this about V1, V2, V3. It's hard to really get good at a craft and to be a very like experienced, capable craftsperson without having done repetition. It's going to be in the thousands. How are you going to be great at something unless you do it thousands and thousands and thousands of times, right? You're just not going to. So I almost feel like repetition is a necessity to become excellent at something. Now you could say,
right?
It is, exactly. The other thing I wanted to mention is, I think, funny enough, I was asking, like, what brings me to repetition? Like, what pulls me towards it? Because it doesn't have an innate pull. Well, it's often the idea that it's like a social thing. Like this year, like I saw all this wood in my shop, like a hoard of wood, and I just wanted to put it in the hands of as many people as I could get. So I made coasters upon coasters upon coasters. How many did I make? I made 45 sets, which have 4 coasters each. So that's 160 coasters plus holders, which would be, another
40. So 200.
Yeah, it's like hundreds.
Are those
and
CNC'd?
hundreds. They are CNC'd, but boy, does it still involves a lot of handwork. And by the way, about the CNC, like the first time I did it, it was a fucking hot mess, tear out, all kinds of problems. By the time I finished tweaking the CNC programs and changing the bits, it comes off that CNC clean as shit.
But that's 160 objects later. Like that's the point of the iteration, right?
Yes,
you had to do 155 coasters before you went, holy shit, I shouldn't use an upcut bit. I should use a downcut bit, because these pieces are backed by the wasteboard, right?
Yes.
But it took, like, that's the value of production right there, because not only is that applicable directly to the coasters, everything else you make on the CNC from now until you get rid of that fucking CNC, you're going to be like, obviously I should be using a downcut bit.
I will never get rid of it, just for the record. And the second thing,
it won't die with me.
and the thing that brings me back to it, and you probably aren't expecting this answer, is my kids. Okay, my daughter, she wants to make money. She's like, Dad, let's make some chopsticks together for the 80th time. And so every time we make a run of chopsticks, that's how she makes her money, that she like for gas money and going out with her friends. And she wants to do something we've done before because she wants that efficiency gain.
Sure.
She wants to get in there.
Sure.
She wants to make the chopsticks and she wants to cash out, right?
Yep.
And so, funny enough, she's
that.
what brings me back. And we've gone through so many efficiency gains because she wants to get in, do the shit, and get out. And more recently, my neighbor's kid, he came home from college. He just went to college. This is his first year. He came home for Thanksgiving, and he's like my own son. I've known him since he was born, and he's amazing. His name's Owen. Owen was like, and I offered to his parents previously that if any point Owen wants to learn how to work with his hands, I will absolutely take the time to work with him on something. So he comes home from college and he's broke as shit. And Owen says, hey, maybe, could I do a project in the shop with you? And I was like, okay, we're going to do another round of coasters.
Ruby was like, how much fucking money I just made on these chopsticks. Why don't you get in that shop, Owen?
And at first my daughter was like, bitch, back up off my Kool-Aid. but Owen's like her brother, so it was okay. And so that's why I did the second round of 22 sets of coasters, was not because I felt like it at the time, but it's because I wanted Owen to have an opportunity to make some money, work with his hands, and here we are. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
It's funny how things work.
It's what I love about that is she is at a point in her life where she obviously doesn't want to spend more time doing a thing than she has to, but we know the joy, she might not have any joy in it right now. Who she's a teenager, a little bit.
She enjoys the time with me.
Sure.
Yeah,
but there is something about the act that will stay with her for the rest of her life too. And
we know that.
Realistically, whether she actually takes up woodworking as a hobby or not, but those are the things that drive us. She will likely do something creative as a hobby in her future iteration of herself because of the time she spent with you in that shop. And there's so many people who have a child who would be like, well, we don't want you to learn CNC woodworking. And that's not the fucking point, dog. The point is that they're in the shop making shit.
Yeah.
I
agree. It just felt like a win-win, both for Ruby and my neighbor son, Owen. It just felt like a win-win.
That's awesome.
All right. So with that, we're at our 45-minute mark. We've talked, that to summarize, repetition makes money. Number one, that's when you make your money.
Yep.
Number two, it can lead to downtime because you're only using part of your brain, where you can either listen to a podcast, you can enjoy yourself, you can think about version 2, version 3, you can think about efficiency gains. And that speaks to the value of it, is it's not, you may cast it away as it's not a creative process, but it is creative, just in a different way. It's not creative about the form of the object. It's creative about the process and the efficiency gains of the object. So next time you have a production project in mind, don't rush it. Take your time and try to find the joy in it for those reasons.
Yeah. And listen, hey, turn off the podcasts, turn off the music, just raw dog the shop for a little bit. And just get in there and just see what happens, just set a timer for 30 minutes and sit there with the shop. Listen, wear your ear protection, but sit there with the shop sounds and just make a thing. And I would be genuinely curious to hear from listeners if they spend 30 minutes of their shop time every week in silence to see what ideas come up, or what new iterations of the process comes up, because that dead time is where iteration happens.
Great. I excellent, Eric. Okay. So with that, we'll end our first segment, and now we have a first.
Oh, guys. All right. So we've got our first sponsor on the pod.
First ever.
Wow.
First ever. I know. So here's what I want to do. I, as we established early on in this episode, can't seem to move my screen in any way whatsoever, so I can't pull up the actual information.
Can you pull up on your phone?
Yes, I can. That's a good pull. So we're gonna do a segment called Hometown for the Holidays. So here's how this is gonna work. Our dear friend Bill Burkle, or my dear friend and yours, he owns a place called WTB Woodworking in Huntington Valley, PA, which is 30 to 40 minutes outside of Philadelphia, where Mary and I live. And I've worked with Bill before. He's a delightful person. Mary was at his grand opening, correct?
Yeah, it's great. It was
wonderful.
Awesome.
So Bill and WTB are the sponsor of this particular episode. But instead of just doing a fucking boring ass ad read like KJ in the Shop Sounds podcast.
Oh,
you did not.
Shots fired. I didn't know that was going to happen.
Here's what I want to do. I love you,
not.
KJ, so much. I love you, buddy. You're a hero. Here's what I want to do. I want to make this into a Hallmark movie pitch. So Hometown for the Holidays is the name of the movie, okay? And what I need Paul and Mary to do with me is I want to create an elevator pitch where, like, if this is a holiday movie and our lead character, our hero of the movie, let's name her Marie. I don't know why we would do
That's
that.
way too close to my name.
And she leaves a small town called, I don't know.
I don't like this.
Lancaster, Massachusetts.
I don't like this.
to go to the big city and get, I don't know, a job in tech or something like that.
No, I hate you so much.
And then she comes back to her hometown for the holidays because she has to come back for I don't know, a pie baking contest. And she has to meet in Huntington Valley for some reason. We have to pitch this movie. How are we going to build this character arc? What are we doing here? Let's go.
Oh my god. Okay, first off, don't appreciate the extreme similarities to me.
I don't understand what you're talking about, Mary. So what is Marie doing when she leaves her hometown of Lancaster, not Lancaster, Lancaster,
okay.
Massachusetts? She goes to the big city. She comes home. She's engaged to a guy named Jareth.
Yeah, who like
Chad. Okay, he's a Giga Chad because she's in tech. That makes sense. Okay, I like it. So she comes home to Lancaster, and
her boyfriend clearly doesn't come with her because he's way too busy.
Jareth is a real dick. Oh, sorry, Chad. Giga Chad.
Dude, Chad has a yacht that he's got to put the yacht in dry dock.
He's got to winter the yacht, obviously. What's he gonna?
Yeah, if you're sailing around Nantucket all the time, you have to like dry dock your yacht. Yeah?
Okay, all right. So Chad is busy dry docking the yacht to make sure that his boat shoes stay shined. So Marie comes back to Lancaster, and what's the reason that she comes into William's woodworking shop? Like what's
Oh no, we're missing the most important part first, where she arrives into town and a car drives by and splashes her with water, and then she gets all really upset. And the guy rolls down his window and is like, haha, sucks for you. And then, she's like, wow, what a dick.
But
after that.
It's small town America, so he's in a truck, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, who was driving that truck, Mary?
It doesn't matter. It's some guy.
No, it's gonna be the romantic lead.
It's William.
That's what I thought.
He pisses her off first, so then they're like butting heads.
Oh shit!
And then
hold on. Does William recognize Maria first?
That's a good point.
Or is he like on his way to the local dive bar, and then Maria's like, "Oh, now I'm soaked and cold, and I need a drink."
Not
so
going
she goes
to a dive bar. He's
obviously
delivering.
They meet playing pool at the dive bar.
Yeah,
and
but
then
he's
he's
not
like, "Oh, I own WTB Woodworking. It's so much has changed since high school. You didn't know that I'm trying to save the local rec center through my woodworking abilities."
and then her parents are like, go get a slab, like a live edge slab. We need to make the holiday table look nice.
There it is. They're like, our dining table just broke because of an argument that you got in with your brother. So now we need a new dining table.
One girl to get a huge ass slab.
Yes. So she's like, where can I go to get a dining table last minute? And she's like, wait a second. I just remember that William said he runs a woodworking shop now.
He's the one who splashed me when he was driving by with a truck full of raw slabs.
Guys, I'm not lying. This is turning out to be a good movie so far.
So, you know what happens? In the store, She gets something and then she drops it, and then he goes to pick it up, and their hands.
Oh, they
touch,
bump heads.
And then
Oh,
that's
they touch.
that's the
Oh.
turning point of the movie.
Okay,
Guys.
all right. So hold on. So she walks into WTB Woodworking, and like the little bell goes off above the door.
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Ding, ding.
Because it's just William, and he's just in there like hand planing a slab for some reason.
Even though he's running the store.
Eric, did we not talk about efficiency gains in this episode? What are you fucking doing hand plating
but
a
it's
slab?
it's
Yeah,
small town America.
Fucking dildo bag
Also,
into
he owns a mill, right?
He owns a mill, but he's got a hand plane a slab because he's a
Every
good
single
handsome
slab.
boy. He's a good handsome boy. All right,
Okay.
so she walks in, the little bell goes dingling, and and he's hand planing a slab, and so she is like, "Hold up, my dining table just broke. What can I do?" And he's like, "Well, listen, I'll tell you. I've got saw stops, I've got Fez tools, I've got shapers." I could probably like build you. I source local trees and slab them and then dry them in the kiln, and I could probably plane one down shirtless and put some Rubio monocoat on there for you real fast.
The shirtless is required.
Because my name is Will and I'm a good woodworking boy. How do you feel about that? And that's when she was like, "Oh, is this Rubio?" And that's when their hands touch.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, I'm with you.
Cue the music. That's
Cue the
yeah. That's when it happens.
Cue the music. Okay, so that then we cut away, and then it's like a montage of like her in other places, him in other places, and then is there like
Ooh, they do a scene like Ghost with the ceramics, except it's hand planing. Where
hold on. We just went from they just touched hands, and now they're like
he's
they're
like
about to
around
fuck
her.
in the shot.
I see nothing wrong with this.
We have to have some transgression in the middle. We can't just have a fuck montage.
I was too eager. Sorry.
Okay, all right, we're getting there though. Okay, so
Bill,
what else? Like,
Bill.
well, Bill's loving this. Bill,
I'm so sorry.
No. This is good.
this is great. So William is building the table.
Yeah.
And Marie, like, what happens next with Marie and her family? Because we need some other tension. Like, okay, so they're back, and she's like, maybe, but then he has to piss her off again before she comes all the way around. Right? Like, you have to have the turn. So what? Does he show up with a slab, and she's like, why would you possibly have thought that I wanted you to use micro jig products on this slab and undercut on this? Like, there's Bloom hardware on this table, and there's like, that makes no sense, sir.
Oh my god.
This is so specific. Wow, Hallmark would not hire us. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm not gonna lie. The first half of this movie, Hallmark would absolutely buy.
That's true. That is true. If it's like a woodworker of any sort.
Okay. So that's all you're gonna give me. So William does something to upset her, and then apparently there's a montage.
Well, we need some hardware to build the table. Yes.
Yeah, like you need hardware, right?
True.
What kind of hardware does Bill have for his lady?
Well, he's got things from Deerwood. He's got Bloom. If you want to lamello this slab, if you want to do a book match but don't want to commit to a glue up, you could lamello.
I feel like
the slab
Keith,
together.
I feel like Keith's head should pop out when you say lamello.
Keith has a cameo in this Hallmark movie.
Where he absolutely has a cameo in here.
Along with Jerry Amola.
Yes.
Oh.
He's definitely finishing this table with Rubio, as we've already established.
I think he tries to make a pitch to Marie that he's all about the little guy. Like he wants to help, brands that are just trying to make their way in the business. Yeah,
he's a good guy.
True. Okay.
So we have Stated Wood Company. He's like, yeah, I work with them. I try to help them out. Temple Tool Company. He's like, yeah, they just put out this amazing, cool Asian or Japanese style pull saw, and we carry that because we care about the little people. And he's trying to like show her
Yes.
that he's like the thoughtful guy because he cares about the little person.
But he's not trying to show her. Like he's just doing it. Like he's cutting the dovetails.
He's showing, not telling.
In this, yes, he's showing not. He's cutting the dovetails in this tabletop for some reason, using temple tools. And she's like, "Oh, that's a really cool Japanese style saw. Where did that come from?" And he's like, "Oh, Temple Tools actually makes them. They're super, super dope." Yeah. And then I was thinking about maybe making like an extra cutting board for your parents, because when my family was going through a hard time in high school, like they took me in. And I finished it with Bumbleshoots, like a local company that makes like, beeswax based finishes in their kitchen. Because that's the kind of guy that William is, he's a down home kind of guy.
Eric, I feel like he's gonna
the longest ad.
Oh yeah. It's like, Bill, this is like 10 minutes, buddy.
It's a 15-minute ad. Okay, all right. So let's wrap it up then. So at the end, William delivers the table like on Christmas morning, right? So like there was a hiccup and he realized that there was a big check in the slab and he was like, I can't deliver this on Christmas Eve. So he finishes it on Christmas Eve night, like an elf in Santa's workshop. And he delivers it on Christmas morning, right as the kids are opening the presents. And that's when they fall in love, I think.
Marie, did you just fall in love?
I am not Marie, so I refuse to answer that question.
I'm having
Marie is from Lancaster.
Yeah, my dad.
You know what's wild is this whole movie's been great so far, and at the very end, what he presents to Marie's parents is a Festool 5767777 quad drive, which is available from WTB Woodworking's giveaway until the end of the weekend after this episode comes out, which
There's
feels
no better
very
way to win over a person.
but like
parents. You're sending them with
here's a quad drive. You don't even know what that is.
here's a drill that you definitely want.
No, you just call it a quad.
Oh my god. Wait, guys, we forgot about Chad.
Oh, Chad. All right, his name was Chad. No. So what happens is Christmas morning, Chad comes in late because he was too busy like docking the yacht. And then like and as Chad is
Oh wait, no, I got it. He drives his yacht up to wherever the place is,
Lancaster, Massachusetts,
together,
very much inland.
Yeah, sure, whatever. But let's pretend that it's not. So they break up, and then together the whole family disassembles his yacht using the festival.
Oh,
the quad drive?
Yes.
Using the quad drive. They're like, you know what? Fuck
it's
Chad.
It's a family activity.
See, I was gonna say, I feel like
God.
William should, like, Chad should show up on Christmas morning first, and everybody's like, oh, Chad's here, but William didn't deliver the table. And then as Chad is getting mad about something, William comes up in the truck and splashes some mud on Chad's boat shoes, and he gets really upset. And then that's when Chad is like, check this out. And then William's like, oh, you can't. But then Chad is like, don't worry, I got your boat shoes, bro. And he takes out like a buffer pad and he puts it in the quad drive and he just cleans up his boat shoes real quick.
Oh my God.
I think. And then they kiss, and then that's how the movie ends.
Wait, Chad and Will.
Chad and Will. Plot twist. They leave Marie at the house all by herself.
I think it's a slam dunk, guys.
This is the best movie ever made. If we don't win a podcasting award for this ad read, I give up on the internet.
We're never going to get asked to do an ad read again. I think it's a slam dunk.
I feel like we gave Bill his money's worth.
Y'all, that is our first and probably last ad read ever. That was atrocious and amazing all at the same time.
Oh man.
That might be the best thing we've ever done on the internet collectively.
Oh, God. Okay, well, we were gonna have another segment, but I don't think
No,
we
we're
can after
saving.
that.
Hey, we're saving unpopular opinions for the after show now.
The plot twist. It got me.
You gotta have a plot twist.
I regret nothing.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. All right.
So do we have patrons?
Not after this.
Okay. I want to thank our patrons. Oh, Kirk. Why do you have to do that to me? Oh, God. All right. I'm crying. I'm literally crying.
Oh, Christ.
Okay. I want to thank, get serious. Okay.
I want to thank Bill Burkle is who I want to thank.
Bill, I hope you enjoyed that, because if not, I'm going to apologize in advance. All right. I want to thank our patrons in the last week or two. We've had quite a few. I want to thank Nikita Wolf Murray, Scott, Jess Y, John Freiberg, and Aziel Epilepsia. Thank you guys for supporting us. And as you know, or if you don't know, what supporting us on Patreon does is it gives you access to the video feed, so you can see us.
It allows us to make great content like what you just heard for the last 15 fucking minutes.
It gives you the video feed so you can see us absolutely dying. And it also can give you access to the after show. In today's after show, what we're going to be talking about is a segment my wife proposed during dinner tonight. That's how fresh it is. She's
Great
like,
segment idea.
how about you do a segment called Unpopular Opinions, and you just let it rip? And I said, that's amazing. And I pitched it to the other two, and they liked it too. So we're going to move to the after show now to talk about unpopular opinions. But before we go, I want to thank everyone for your continued support. If you like this podcast, would you do us a favor and tell someone new who hasn't listened to it that you like it? That will help us grow the audience.
Also, feel free to submit questions, by the way, that we could answer. We might answer in the after show.
Fair point.
Yes. And if you
also feel free to point those new listeners to this episode.
do not do that. And if you care to give us a rating on Spotify and or Apple Podcasts or YouTube Podcast, we've just been. I just realized there were some reviews there that I had never read before, and so for the people that left them, thank you. And if you could give us a rating on those, that would also help us. So we hope you found tonight's discussion on repetition and finding creativity in that useful. And we really hope you enjoyed the Hallmark movie. With that,
hometown for the holidays. Look for it on Hallmark 2025.
Me and Eric and Dildo Baggins will see you in the after show.
Bye.
No.